And the thing is, there's about 10,000 food chemicals that are allowed in the food in the American food supply that isn't allowed in other countries. I recently did a video where I was explaining to people U.S. foods that are banned in other countries.
Mm.
So you got Gatorade and Mountain Dew
Wow.
banned in other countries because it has BVO in it, which is brominated vegetable oil and dyes. You have things like maraschino cherries, which is the cherry you see on top of the banana split of the
Mm.
sundae, banned in other
Why is
countries
that banned? The cherry.
because it has that red number 40 dye in it.
Okay, yeah.
And that's been associated with a lot of bladder cancer, thyroid cancer, kidney cancer, and also allergies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, U.S. pork, and I'm sure you guys are like, you shouldn't
Yeah.
have been eating in the first place, but U.S. pork.
Y'all say y'all love Malcolm. Y'all say y'all love Malcolm, but can't put that bacon down.
Yeah, but it's banned in 160 countries
Mm.
because they put this chemical in it called ractopamine in the animal feed. It makes the
Mm.
pig grow bigger. But
Mm.
it's dangerous for the heart. It's dangerous for the nervous system. Banned in 160 countries. U.S. corn banned in 140 countries because they spray it with atrazine.
Right.
Atrazine is a pesticide that they did test on it, and they discovered that if you use the right amount, you can convert a male frog into a female frog,
Yes.
meaning not make them gay, literally
Gender change, gender
change
bending
the gender.
chemicals.
And if you look at what's allowed in the water supply, it's about
Mm-hmm.
3,000 times the normal limit that was used to convert that frog into a
Yes.
female frog.
And yeah, Dr. Wesley did a great study about that, when he was giving a breakdown and they're in some water supplies. You know what I mean? That you really want to do your research and check your local city,
Yeah,
check Atlanta.
yeah,
That's all I'm saying.
indeed, indeed. Other foods like farm raised fish.
He laughing. I'm serious. Oh my God! Listen, the water. Listen, water. Our bodies, our skin is our largest organ, so we
Indeed.
absorb things, right?
Yep.
So when we take a shower and you just soaking in a bath, that bath is full of chemicals. You
Yeah,
don't think
indeed.
about it because you can't see it, right? So they're not detectable by your senses, your eyes. You don't feel it, but that stuff get clogged up on you. The same way when we drink out of bottles, there's plastics that gets into our bloodstream.
Yep.
Right. So there's a lot of things that we're getting poisoned all the time. And then we go out there and talk about, let's go race for cancer. But it's like our lifestyles are cancerous.
Yes. Yeah. And then the unfortunate thing is, like when you look at where cancer was in the 1970s when Richard Nixon claimed the war on cancer, and you look at where we're at today, we're worse.
Mm-hmm.
And they've thrown over $300 billion into the war against cancer, but the only thing that has helped cancer in the 1990s was the fact that you remember, like, all the rappers used to smoke Newports.
Mm.
It used to be a cool thing to smoke cigarettes.
Mm.
But they did a campaign where they just essentially urged people to stop, and people stopped smoking cigarettes. That's what's helped the cancer.
Right.
It hasn't been chemo, it hasn't been radiation, it hasn't been surgery, because those are the same three modalities that they used in the 1970s.
Right.
So it's important that we know and understand that the same way they have industrialized our food and now our food is filled with chemicals, it's like that with everything. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's flame retardants in mattresses that cause us to breathe those in, and we get toxic from that. There's all type of toxins in the air. There's toxins in the water. And so because we don't understand how to get these toxins out of the body, what things to eat, what things to do, how do we stimulate our lymphatic system, we are always going toward that modern medicine modality
Right.
that truly doesn't get us the ability to fight cancer that we need to, because everybody in this room at some point has had a cancerous cell in their body.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. But we don't know that because our immune system is constantly stumping it out without us knowing it.
Right.
And so it's important for us to know, even when you take chemo, the thing that saves you is your immune system.
Mm.
Because chemo, again, another military invention. Chemo is something that
This school year, speak your mind.
Shoot for the stars and find your people.
We got this.
it doesn't just kill the cancerous cells,
Right.
it
Kills
kills
all the
healthy
cells.
cells too. This is
Yeah.
why you're losing your hair. This is why you can't eat properly anymore. This is why your skin turns another color.
Is
It's
it true
killing
that
everything.
people die because of the chemo,
Yeah,
not the
absolutely.
cancer?
Yeah.
It's the chemo treatment that they have to survive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when you think about something like that, it's like you think about the amount of people that were diagnosed that, you know, if they try something alternative, they may have survived because the rate of dying from chemo, I'm sure, is very high. Like, is I don't know what the percentage is, but you have a 50-50 chance. You either survive or you don't.
Yeah.
You understand me? And so most people go in there thinking death, right?
Yeah.
Hospitals are designed like morgues. I talked about this with the brother Yaki. It's like when you go to a hospital, you're not in an environment that you think is about to save your life, right? It looks just like a morgue does,
Yep.
right? There's no life, there's no colors, no vibrancy, no plants, no sound healing going on, ain't no sage being lit, none of that stuff. It feels like, oh, I'm about to go in here on my deathbed, literally.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? A hospital bed is the equivalent to a deathbed because more people go in the hospital and die, right?
Yeah.
So you like during the C-19 situation, people that was put on the respirators, they had a very high chance of not getting off those respirators.
Yeah.
So it was better to, you know, allow to practice, you know, open air therapy and sunlight and whatever other remedies that you could at home versus going into a hospital, which decreases your chance of surviving.
Yeah. And the thing is, now we can look back what 2020 hindsight. And one of the things that they discovered was that if you had a deficiency in vitamin D, it increased your rate exponentially for having a severe response to C-19. And if you look at the African American population, 80% of us are deficient in vitamin C. And the reason why that's so important is this. We're sun people. The reason why our skin is like this is because of the adaptation to the sun. And so when we move from the equator, the Caribbean, when we move from Africa, we remove ourselves from that year-round sun.
Right.
And so anybody that lives above the latitude of Atlanta, you're gonna need extra sun, especially if you have melanin, because the thing about melanin, it reflects the sunlight. And so as a person of color, as a Black person, you're gonna need even more sunlight because that's who we are. And so when you start to think about it, why we were so impacted by C-19, it was because, we had deficiencies in vitamin D. And a lot of times I'll see people who come in and they have a vitamin D level of 8. Now that's supposed to be at least 50. Now they say the therapeutic level is above 25, but if you look at lifeguards who spend a lot of time outside, like we did back in the days, because most of the work that we did was manual labor and most of it was outside. If you look at a lifeguard's, you know, vitamin D level, it's like 100, brother. So that's what our sort of vitamin D level should be.
High energy.
Yeah, so it's really about realigning ourselves back with nature and who we are, because we're so far away from that in the natural sense of things because of the conveniences. I mean, we leave home, we get it directly into a car.
Right.
We drive into a parking lot.
Right.
We walk from a parking lot into a building.
Most of our life we're avoiding the sun.
Avoiding the sun.
And then the children, you know what I mean? They have to go to school. You get an hour of recess. I mean, when I was in school, I don't know what they're doing now, where we were in the sun just for a brief moment of time, then you back inside the classroom. You know what I mean? So most of the time you are housed, right? And this is by design, right? The American lifestyle was designed. It didn't naturally occur, right? It was designed so that the industrialists can farm people into becoming workers, right? So that, because you got to think about America in the way that it was formed. And when these big companies, these industrialists started to make millions and millions of dollars off the American people, they started saying that, wait a minute, now that I've built these factories, I need somebody to work in them. How do we train up these people that's going to be in our factories now that we're making all of this money? Well, let me go talk to the president, right? Let me lobby them. Let me talk to them about what the curriculum should be. So therefore, when they're going from high school, they can come over here and become factory workers. Right. So you have to understand that humans have been farmed for capital. Right. And so the human, as industrialization changed and the way that, you know, the type of business that was being done, right, from the food business to the banking business to all these industry emerged, they shaped America, right, which also shaped the average lives of the consumer, right? So not only were you the consumer of the product, right, you were the producer of the product, right? And so you literally this became like an animal farm. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
exactly what it is. A pipeline.
Yeah, it's a fucking pipeline. But we don't really, and this is why history is so important. Like,
people focus a lot on nutrition, body wise. You know, I'm going to feed this particular system of the body, I'm going to feed that system. Very rarely do people speak about the mind. Very rarely do people speak about the brain. The brain needs the most energy, right? The brain is needed to process. The brain is needed to, you know, compartmentalize. The brain is needed for so many things, you know, but we don't know what brain food looks like. You know, we know that the body's electrical, and what I understand about gold is not only is it super conductive, but it's non-corrosive and it's a noble element. So they say that if I am what I eat, I want to be noble. You know what I'm saying? I want to be of the highest degree. And I also want to focus on mental health. I want to focus on gut health. I want to focus on energy. I want to focus on youth. I want to focus on, you know, accessing pineal activity, hormonal balance. Everything the goal represents is what I want to see more of. So what better thing to do but align myself with this particular product and get it out to as many people as I can by singing the praise of gold, which is something that our people have been doing for over 10,000 years.
Our ads work as hard as you do by bringing customers and sales closer than you can imagine. Small businesses saw 26% of their sales on average driven by Amazon ads.
I was looking at the documentary Food, what is it called? The Food That Built America. Shout out to Wall Street Trapper putting me on, and it was talking about, you know, coca leaves in America. How number one, Coca-Cola has the only private contract to, you know, distribute coca leaves in America, right? They're the largest private distributor, which is cocaine, right? Where it's made from, at least. You know, and it started off by Dr. Pemberton, and Dr. Pemberton
was a pharmacist.
He was a pharmacist, and he was addicted to morphine. But he was experimenting with all these concoctions and elixirs, you know, and he finally figured out how to take the cocoa and the cola nut and how to figure out how to put that sugar in it. And he was able to come up with that great concoction as Coca-Cola, but that shit was cocaine at first. And they had the coca wine at first, which was endorsed, they said, by 3 popes. Everybody was high. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to imagine, this was normal life where one of the largest distributed drinks just had cocaine in it. So you got to remember, in history, everybody was high. You know what I'm saying? Like, when we look at history, people doing crazy, irrational things, like, they was on cocaine. You know what I'm saying? And everything else that you can think of, because these weren't regulated at that particular point in time. Right? But his concoction turned into, you know, one of the largest consumed drinks on the planet Earth. But when it comes from a health standpoint, you know, and because we look at it from, okay, his family created Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola becomes this big established name, and it is what it is now, right? But, you know, what was the effect of the American and the global health impact from that drink, right? Because it's not a health drink, right? But when they created, or when they banned liquor, right? And they said a lot of times that the liquor was banned, and it was pushed even heavier because the wives got tired of their husbands being drunk all the time. Right, so the wives is like, you know, if the liquor is touching your lips, you can't touch our lips. That was part of their slogan. So women was able to help decide that ban on prohibition. And what came in place of that was soda fountains. Right, so people used to get by the soda fountains, and that's where they were socialized. So sugar started being pushed on the American people as the new drug. Right, so when they was able to take their coca leaf out, they put more sugar in. So they replaced one drug with another. Right. And so there, you know, there is no, you know, there was no health food that just went and became truly successful. It was always a drug inside of that people were addicted to, that they wrap the food around or the drink around.
And you know what's crazy is that everything starts off in its natural form, which is actually good for you, and then they devil it up.
Well, yeah, because the people was using the coca leaves just for normal remedies.
I mean, like,
pain relieving.
Even when I spent some time in Peru, you could use coca leaves to not get altitude sickness.
Okay, so you was on them coca leaves in Peru.
No, I'm just saying.
Oh, no, it's cool, bro. Listen, listen.
But
It's hey.
and even like when you think about the original like sodas, like when they used
Yeah.
to use soda fountains in apothecaries, the original Dr. Pepper
Mm.
was all herbs. It was
Mm.
sassafras. You know, it was herbs like sarsaparilla.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? It was roots. It was
Mm.
herbs. And then they would add in
Root
natural
beer.
Yeah,
Roots.
roots. You know what I'm saying? Same thing when you think about ginger ale. Like ginger ale was originally a ginger, you know, drink created for nausea and vomiting. But now
And
when you look at the ginger ale today, it doesn't have any ginger in it.
I'm gonna say something about ginger ale though. I don't know how it works, but it still works for nausea and vomiting.
Yeah, it does, because that's what ginger does. And so
Even without the ginger in it though. I don't know what they do to ginger ale is like
they take the extracts out.
They take the extracts. So whatever they still got tracted in there, I don't know what the word is the opposite. Extract, intract. Something's working in the ginger ale.
Yeah, but you know, you made a key point about the sugar. Like even the slave trade, like the slave trade was really all about sugar. It was about how do we get these people, because sugar, cane was the first original sugar. And they used to call it white gold.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And cane doesn't grow in Europe. And so what they noticed was it would grow in the southern states and it would grow in the Caribbean. How do we get people to come mine this cane so we can get the sugar out of it? That's really where the slave trade came from. And so when you start to track how sugar was growing, because you look in the 1880s, the average American consumed between 1 and 5 pounds of sugar every year. Not a lot at all. If you look today, we consume 152 pounds of sugar.
For sugars, if you try to do a sugar fast, you can't eat nothing.
Yeah.
Because if you start looking on the back of them packages, like, you know what, I'm gonna stop eating sugar for a month. Everything got sugar in it.
They know what you like.
100%. Like, and that goes to our taste buds and our palates. It's like you're being fooled into thinking you like things.
Yep.
Right? You don't like things. You like the chemicals in it. You like the flavors that are associated with it. Same thing as like the average person doesn't really like meat. They like the flavors that's on the meat. You know what I mean?
You don't like it, you're addicted to it.
Yeah, you're addicted to it.
Because if you can't say I'm not gonna eat this and actually do it,
right,
that's addiction.
Right.
And that's what I found with a lot of people is that they either suffer from addiction to certain foods or emotional eating using those foods. Because quite often what you'll see is when somebody's life is bitter, they're trying to get sweetness through the food. Everybody's always trying to balance. Same thing with meat. If you feel like you can't just leave meat alone, first of all, it's probably because it's just tradition. But I always tell people, like, I would challenge that too, because if you go back in the 1950s and 60s, meat really wasn't affordable. You had to go to a butcher to get meat.
Right.
And so most people could not afford to eat meat with every meal. So most people, Monday through Saturday, were not eating meat. And then on Sunday, they would have that feast where they invite the pastor over, and then they would actually eat meat on that day. But Monday through Saturday, most people were actually eating a plant-based diet.
That's very interesting. Like, just thinking about, so just what you're saying that in frame of reference, when we think of plant-based diet, we think of this new age term and reality that people are going through. But a plant-based diet was a normal thing that our ancestors, whether white, black, brown, whatever, they just ate more fruits and vegetables.
Yes.
It was normal to eat from, you know, local farmers, right? And what was in that region and what was being brought through that region. So a plant-based situation was just a normal reality. It wasn't like, oh, I'm plant-based, I'm vegan. Like, these terms weren't even made up. You know what I'm saying? Until later on, because of the complexity of the new standard American diets, and because of people being able to ship things, right? Because I think about this specifically, like, our stomachs getting used to a certain diet up for hundreds and thousands and millions of years. And then all of a sudden the industry of food comes, right? So now food is being shipped to you and made to you for the specific purpose of you becoming a return customer, right, of that industry. Now you have guts and, you know, families and human beings in different regions and origins who's trying new foods that are outside their local vicinity that they never had before.
Yeah.
Because you have to imagine that only like rich people who are well traveled could go to these different places and try different foods and delicacies.
Yep. That's why they used to call gout a royal disease. Because when you get gout, it comes from being able to eat the rich foods, come from eating a lot of meat, eating a lot of sugar. So these were diseases of royalty in the years before, but now the diseases of the poor today. Because we have so much access to it in the form of processed foods, meats, etc.
Same thing that obesity was seen in some places as a form of wealth. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can eat a lot, like I'm good. And you got the little skinny guy that can't afford a piece of chicken.
No why.
You know what I'm saying? And to this day, right, there's some people that still celebrate the Buddha belly as a sign of wealth, right? Like, I'm eating good. Like, no, you eating too much.
Right.
That's all that means.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with wealth. You're just eating too much. Yeah. A person can eat that much on food stamps. We got people that's poor that are obese. Yeah. Right. So we don't have an issue with food supply right now. Right. We have people in supply with the right food, good foods, foods that are good for them. But we have all these ultra processed foods. Right. Which is decreasing your lifespan. Yeah. Right. So the more you eat these ultra processed foods every single day, you're taking years and robbing you off your life. Yeah. And, you know, I want to talk a little bit about, you know, blue zones, right? And the zones where people are living, you know, and have the highest level of, you know, life expectancy. So Japan is #1 on the list, right? So in these blue zones, you know, specifically in Japan, why do you think, especially since you live there, why do you think that Japan has the highest levels of life expectancy in the world? Like, I'm talking about centenarians, people who's living over 100.
Yeah. I think it's because the philosophies are built in the culture, and specifically in Okinawa, Japan, where I live. And what I mean by that is they have a saying called hara hachibu, which in Japanese means eat only to 80%. So it's not just about the food, it's also about how much you should be eating.
These people eating to 119% out here.
Yeah. And the reason why that's so important is backed by science. Science says that when your stomach gets to 80%, there's a 20% lag time on your brain recognizing that. So the philosophy itself is backed by science as well too. They also incorporate a lot of herbs into their diet. They also incorporate a lot of superfoods in their diet as well too. Like for instance, here in the US, we have the white potato. There they have the purple potato.
Yeah,
and the purple potato is full of antioxidants and full of fiber as opposed to the potato that we have here. They also eat a lot of sea vegetables, which is hugely important because the way that we farm here in the US is monocropping. It robs the soil, okay, of any nutrients. Whereas there, they use the real system. They use, a type of farming called regenerative agriculture, where they're doing the crops based upon the seasons and the time of the year. And so for them, they're getting a lot of nutrients from the ground, but they're also getting those nutrients that you can't get from the ground that are in the ocean, like iodine. And so this is why so many people have issues with their thyroid. They don't eat a lot of things from the ocean as well, too. So they were eating a lot of kelp, a lot of seaweed, those type of things.
Getting that minerals in there.
Yes. And then they have this philosophy that's built on community, where like somebody who's 95 years old will be paired up with somebody who's 80 years old. And that will be responsible for that other person, checking on them, etc.
Now, what you said was very important because, you know, as I was doing some study on the blue zone, that's exactly what they found, right? Because you find them in different places in Europe as well. And these are these simplistic lifestyles that people are living, right? Not a lot of stress, right? Very important. We live in city zones, which are industrial zones, right? Made for making money, not for life longevity, right? Most people don't start like, you know, the baby boomer generation didn't start living life till after retirement. What do I want to do simply for joy? Right? By that time, you have already taken all of your greatest years, compiled all of the stress eating and all of the depression and anxiety from having to figure out how to get to that age of retirement onto your life, which decrease your lifespan. So you end up having 5-10 years left of life by the time you retire.
Yep.
Right? Especially when you're talking about America and the standard being 78 life expectancy.
Yeah.
So when
Which
you
is
talk
a horrible deal too, by the way.
terrible. It's
You retire at 65 and you got 10 years left. That's a horrible deal. I worked for 40 years.
The idea of
retire at
retirement
65.
is a scam.
And my golden years, my body's run down from
Right.
working, stressing, all of the horrible foods. That's
Mhm.
a horrible deal.
It's a scam because number one, now retirement age has now increased,
Yep.
right? Because of inflation and because of what's going on with the economy today. So you talking about these people have been working 50, 60 years and then realize, damn, I can't even retire.
Yeah.
But the idea of waiting to retire, right, means you're not living life right.
Yes.
Right. And that's really gets into the heart of it when you talk about people in these blue zones where they're living more simply, right? There's less anxiety,
Yep.
right? Depression is not rampant. Like I think that we over normalize depression in society today, like it's supposed to be a normal effect that everybody's supposed to go through.
Right.
This is something that is more rampant in Western society because of the way that it's built. When you go walk outside, think about how many things are built for the human being, right? Nature, so that it can actually enjoy and live life, versus how many things are just meant to make somebody in power more powerful and rich.
Right.
So when you can have a life that is built more simply, right? And you can have joy, and then that connection piece that you talk about the elders, that's very important.
Yes.
Because, you know, we have a lot of elderly people, but we don't have a lot of respect for elders.
Yes.
Right? The elders are
not like we used to.
The not at all. But for me, I don't really see it at all. Like it maybe it was like at some point in time, let's say it was 100%, then it just started decreasing over decade to it's like negative at this point.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about elders and you talk about pairing with elders, there was a certain level of respect you got when you became a lighthouse of knowledge and wisdom. That's the elder. I'm not just talking about old age people. I'm talking about that's a tree of wisdom I can go to. Right. So we don't have that same, you know, disposition because the grandmas of today are more ratchet than their daughters.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So they're not really becoming more wise, right? They're just becoming old. Right. And then they're deteriorating even faster because of the artificial reality that we living in that's breaking them down even more, but they're not becoming more substance, right? It's not becoming more valuable. So that whole metric of, yo, when I become an elder, I'll be taken care of, I'll be respected, right? It eases your life. And then somebody is helping you through those later years where you need the most help instead of stuffing you inside a retirement home for you to die and you become bedridden. So it's like that. And then when we talk about the way that they eat, they're not overthinking about, oh, I got to get these nutrients, I got to get these minerals. It's just built into the lifestyle, right? The average person in Japan is not thinking about, oh, I need the nutrients from the sea so I can get this sea moss in my body and I can get these minerals. No, that's just what we're going to eat because it doesn't make sense for me to just eat meat all day. I have to get my plants inside it. It's not a plant-based diet, it's just how I'm eating. And then the food is not ultra processed, right? Because you're talking about people who are getting local food still.
And they grow most of it.
And they're growing most of the food. And so they have a connection to it. And, you know, I think one of the most important things that anybody can do over it, regardless of what food you do, is pray over it, right? Because prayer does energize the food. It creates a different connection, right? So now when you're asking this food to heal you, even if it's not healthy food, right? You're still programming your body to say, this is the reason I'm eating this food. But when you're eating purely for flavor and taste, and it has nothing to do with health at all, now this food is no longer a medicine or even has the capability of tricking your body and thinking that it's a medicine like a placebo.
Yeah, but it's so, I tell people this because, you know, when I go home for like the holidays and I do, you know, right before we eat, we pray. And I tell people, I'm like, look, you know, like before we pray, you know, God said, without works.
Right.
I said, so look at your plate. Ask yourself, did you do the work? Is this God's food? If this is the food that God made for you, did it come from a box, bag, can, jar? All right, cool. Let's pray now.
You can't have the devil can't serve you and then you pray to God.
Yeah. So
you know what I'm saying? Are you gonna give all your money to the devil, man? I done paid the devil. He done made this good ass product. put it on the table. Now I'm about to pray to God over. God, man,
Yeah.
where you get that from?
He's like, but what about me? I made what you needed for
They
your
got
body.
the Coca-Cola sitting right there, about to wash it down. Talking about, thank God for this.
Yeah, so it's so important that we get aligned first, and I think that's where we have sort of lost ourselves in that alignment, is understanding like the type of food that I'm recommending to people isn't the food I want you to eat. It's the food that God created for all of us. It's the kind of food that the body recognizes, because real recognize real.
Right.
Okay, it's the kind of food that the body can break down, because you can't break down processed food. It's the kind of food that can be utilized, meaning the vitamins, the minerals, everything in it can be utilized into the body. And then most importantly is the kind of food that can then be eliminated from the body. Because most of the food that we eat, we just want the vitamins, the minerals, the trace elements, the amino acids, the healthy fats. Our bodies just want that out of it.
Right.
But that substance that you have on your plate, that's coming out the other end.
But
So
see,
if you can't eliminate, it's going to sit in your body, rot, ferment, fester, and create its own toxins. And this is why people have that belly.
And see, this is why it's important to develop your taste buds to liking raw foods, right? And liking the food in its natural form. It's like when you look at ketchup, right? Ketchup was created based on catsup, right? Which I believe is like Asian, of some sort of like Asian flavored thing. And they did that because the meat at the time wasn't always the best meat, right? So they had the bacon or the meat on their plate. Sometimes it'd have a funny smell to it, a funny taste. Sometimes be past expiration, but people didn't have the science to even know. So, people would eat this meat and they would say, well, it's too expensive to just throw away. So they would have to eat it. There was like a level of respect, right, for the money spent on it. But they would pour this catsup on top of it, right? And as the guy who from Heinz was sitting there thinking about it, like, damn, what if I created something that was local, right, that people could pour on top of these foods? And at the time, it was so bad that they would have to have bottles that were colored, so you couldn't see what was inside. So people didn't really trust it, right? So the bottles would be like dark brown or like greens. But he had the bright idea of, he finally utilized tomatoes to come up with, the ketchup, so he can pour over food that wasn't good. Right? Didn't smell good. I mean, we do that today. You want to pour a bunch of hot sauce on food because you don't like the natural taste of the food. Right? And we don't really think about that whole thing, like even our rituals of pouring extra flavor on foods that we naturally don't like. Why does it need all of that? Right? And then our body is not naturally attuned to even getting the bitterness out of it, which is good for our body to experience. Right? And so instead, we want sugar on everything because they put sugar in the ketchup.
Absolutely.
So now what we're doing is we're sugar coating everything. And this is what we do from a biological sense, but it's what we do in a philosophical sense with society. Right? We don't want things raw anymore. We don't want things natural. We don't want truth real. We want everything sugar coated. So our whole life is not taking things as is. So you never like the raw substance. You only like the truth sugar coated. Don't tell it to me the way it is. Nope, I don't really like this meat. I'm gonna pour and figure out as many concoctions and seasons and flavors I can throw on top of this, so I can say I like this. Right? And this is how we're disguising these meals that we don't like, that aren't good for us, that are killing us, and we're sugarcoating them so that we can enjoy them.
And this is why you can say, I love this food. You love the food because you're addicted to it, because there's nothing but sugar. And sugar is by far one of the most addictive substances you can have in your body. And so when you think about it, it's not only ketchup, it's salad dressings have sugar in it. It's mayo has sugar in it. It's virtually every product has sugar in it. And so what it's doing is, if you take, for instance, like in Jewish culture, they have kosher meats. And if you ever, have eaten like kosher meat, it has no taste to it. And the reason why it has no taste to it is they literally kill the animal and instantly chop it up. Okay? Now, what that does is, and people don't realize this, is that it prevents from all the body fluids from leaking out into the body to tenderize, because the urine and the feces, once anything dies, we die, all of those systems break down. All of those things that are holding those body fluids together, they didn't open up. Osmosis shuts down. And so that's literally what's tenderizing the meat, And that's literally why people actually like a lot of the meat. And so it's important for us to know and understand that even when you would do it that way, or if you do it the process way, which means that they take ketchup, they take monosodium glutamate, they take food additives, they take food dyes to put on, because most of the meat that you see in the supermarket today, it all looks red. But we know when somebody's dead, like we know they start to turn a gray. And if you'll notice that what will happen is if you go into the supermarket and that meat is expired and it goes past a certain date, that dye will start to disappear and it will start to turn gray again.
Let's talk about this dye, man, because this is bad, right? Like all of this fish farming, right? You know, if you go to the store and you see that, like I was at Costco and I was looking at a salmon and the salmon says no color dye in it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And another one will say, you know, farm raised, or another one would say it's not farm raised. This is, you know, caught naturally, right?
Wild caught.
Wild caught. But it's like, first of all, when you read these things, they're competitive brands. So they're trying to tell you the modes or the advantages they have on the other brand.
Yeah.
Right? But you don't really think about why they're putting all these signs up. Yeah. Right? If one said we don't have color dye, that means everyone that doesn't say that has it in it. Right? So when you go look at it and you look at this package, now people go to the grocery store, oh snap, I've been eating color dye this whole time. This is not what this fish looks like at all. And these farms are nasty because they're in spaces of feces where these, I'm almost getting sick thinking about it. You know what I'm saying? It's like the food that we're eating right now can be equivalent to when you go back to the 1500s, before there was an FDA, right? And people had to just take a risk, right? Because I think he went to, when Heinz was given the experiment, he had, I think, 2 drinks. I think they were cognac. And I think the president was FDR. I don't know if I'm correct on that. But he basically said these 2 drinks, and he said that one has formaldehyde in it and one doesn't, right? And he said, smell it, move it around, see if you can tell the difference. And he picked up one, and he was like, this for sure, this is cognac for sure. He said, okay, well, would you bet your life on it? Would you take a sip? And President was like, no, it wasn't the president, but it was one of his advisors, like, all right, I get what you're saying. You know what I'm saying? And he was like, listen, this is the choice that people have to make every single day, unwillingly though, right? They don't know that they're putting their life, and that's the same choice that people are making today, right? Hundreds of years later, you're making an unwilling choice that you're possibly putting poison and chemicals in your body, but you don't know.
You don't know.
Right? They're not advertised like that. It's not put in front of you like that, right? But this is things that are the cancer causing, the disease causing, right? And you know, we do this every day without thought process, and we wonder why all these ailments come up, right? All these cancers, all these tumors.
And your doctor can't tell you what it is.
They don't know. And if the doctor ain't recommending a change in lifestyle, because you can never, you know, disease doesn't develop just through the genome expression. Oh, it was in my family. That's just epigenetics. Oh, let's look at your goddamn the food table. You know what I'm saying? What are you eating? Right? So if you don't have something inside of your lifestyle that is conducive towards medicine for the body, right?
SGU put me in the best position to become a doctor. I wouldn't change my experience for the world.
If we have medicine, you know, or we have food, the food means that we don't need the medicine. You know what I'm saying? So like
the food is the medicine.
Right, the food is supposed to be the medicine. So, you know, when you go look in your mother's cabinet, your uncle's cabinet, your cabinet, if you got a huge pharmacy in your cabinet, it's because you're not eating right. Because that means the table was supposed to stop this from becoming this. Right? But when you don't eat right at the table, now you have to go into the bathroom and you have to take all of these pharmaceutical pills. And so if you continue to eat the disease, you're going to continue to need the pills.
Because here's the thing that people really need to understand about food. Food could either be the highest form of healing or it could be the deadliest form of poison. And what people don't realize is that a lot of the food that we eat is either feeding healing or it's feeding disease. And so if you eat the wrong foods, then the foods that you eat will eat you. And so it's important for us to know and understand we make powerful choices about our lifestyle and about our life and longevity every time we pick up spoon or a fork. And what always am trying to communicate to people is that, you know, like when you start to think about like it, because the first thing that people talk about when I say don't eat this, don't eat that, and like, all right, so what the hell can I eat? And I always tell them, I was like, what did God create?
Right.
You know, like, look at that. Look at what, first start there. What did God create? If you're eating out a box, bag, can, jar, etc., and it has ingredients on it that you can't pronounce, and if it has more than 50 ingredients and it's supposed to be just a jar of spaghetti sauce, then it's a good indication that you're eating something that isn't good for your body.
Right, because you got to remember that all of that stuff that you're seeing in there is so they can sell it.
Yes.
Right? It's not so that you can eat it and enjoy it. Like if it was made in front of you in this natural way that they made it 100 years ago, then it will probably be ready for you. It'll be fresh.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Then cool, go ahead and eat that. Right? But now they have to think about the industry. They have to think about business. How do we preserve this? How do we get it to look good while it's on the shelf? So they have to think about shelf life. They have to think about, you know, the shipping time and the traveling and all of these other different things.
The
color,
maintaining
flavor,
the texture,
competing with other people who's doing new type of flavors.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with it being a good product for you.
Yeah.
Right? It's the manipulation of the taste buds by scientists.
Yeah.
Right? It's no longer made by farmers.
Yeah.
Right? These are scientists figuring things out. Right? So it's like, that to me automatically says that, damn, I don't want my chef to be a scientist.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I would rather my chef be a farmer.
Indeed. Indeed. And the reason why that's so important is this, because people are under the impression that we're being protected when food is placed on the shelf. But what's important for people to know and understand is that it's called the FDA, Food and Drug Administration. Just look at what's being approved now. You got clone meat that's approved. You have the genetically modified salmon that is now approved in the market.
They 3D printing food.
3D printing food. You see that we now have the genetically modified foods that are now been in the market since the early 2000s. And now when you look at the label, you'll now see bioengineered ingredients.
Man,
which means genetically modified.
They got companies that's out here selling celebrity clone meat.
Yeah.
From cell cultures that they're taking. Like this is getting weird out here.
It's getting real weird.
Again, as entrepreneurs, we are responsible for containment of a lot of information, and we have to scale our businesses. So we're constantly processing information. We have to keep our mind open to new information. We have to make observations of our competition. We have to be aware of our customers, right? In the times, entrepreneurs working 16, 18 hours. So we need our rest. We need our recharge, because we need to get right back where we left off, but we're responsible for scaling. So we even have to come back in the game, even better than we left. So how do we do that, right? We have to have something that speeds the particular glands that are responsible for making these processes happen in our body. And in our body, the pineal gland is responsible for that. So during the daytime, it releases serotonin, and at nighttime, it releases melatonin in accordance with the planetary circadian rhythm, right? The way that we are helping entrepreneurs be a better version of themselves, we're making sure that people's most important asset, their body, is recession-proof, right? What does a recession body look like? One that has an energy deficit, right? One that is, slightly a few steps or seconds off, right? Can't afford that in business. You can't even afford to be a split second off. You want to be totally present and slightly ahead of the game. And that's what we focus on when we focus on the brain.
One thing I want, one thing I need. It's that one thing I want, one thing I need. Come together, come together, come together, ding-a-dong-dong.
So I know you heard about the centimillionaire Brian Johnson, who's trying to reverse his biological age, right? So I want to talk a little bit about biological age, right? And the method of basically looking at your cells and your body, and subscribing the age to your heart, to your different organs. For him, he said he want his penis to be 18, he want his heart to be 18, his lung to be 18, brain to be 18.
Yeah.
So he's spending $2 million per year, and he's doing multi-generational blood transfusions between his father and his son.
Okay.
Right? And infusing that within his body so that I think the blood transfusion is supposed to decrease the chances of like dementia and things of that nature. But
Okay. Yep.
you know, they said it's 50% chance that people who get these transfusions, right, have adverse effects because you're putting somebody else's blood in your body. And if it's not a match, then your immune system can reject it, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, these people are doing things like cryotherapy.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? There's companies that will
Stem
allow you
cells.
for like $80,000 to $200,000 to freeze your body and brain in hopes that scientists one day will be able to, you know, awaken you and you back alive and you living again and you can use that same body. Then you got things like, you know, the digital consciousness transfer, right? So taking your consciousness transfer, like this is stuff that people are really paying for at this moment.
Sounds like a
It's
science fiction movie.
but like this is what's going on. But I want to talk a little bit about, you know, immortality and like the real idea. You know, in the Bible they said that there was people living 2,500 years.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And people living hundreds of years, right? We don't think about, you know, there's people, grandmas that have lived to 90 and 100 years old, right? And some early or people being recorded now living up to 120 years.
Yeah.
But people are trying to live forever,
Yeah.
right? Now, what makes people die in the first place, right? Like, can you explain telomeres?
No, yeah. So, if you read in a lot of ancient texts, what you'll hear is they were giants in those days, and what they're often referring to were the Anunnakis.
Mm-hmm.
And what people believe was that this people from another planet came here, and they enslaved us as humans and created the humans today that we know as today as us. And what they believed they did was, most people are under the impression that when humans were here and they came, that they were a lower form of life. But from my research, what I began to understand is that we weren't a lower form of life. We had the ability for telekinesis, to be the ability to be in tune with nature, to talk to other animals, all those type of things. But what the Anunnaki did, according to my research, was they split the DNA and took off the telomeres and put the telomere caps on. And the telomere caps are what gives us the age of 120 years. So when you read in the Bible, and
119, we just
yeah.
It is at 119. Yes,
But that's why they say you can live to 120 years, because those telomere caps that are at the end of our DNAs are giving us that cap to life. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can expand that. It's very difficult to do that physically, but it's much more easy to do that spiritually. So when people ask me why I don't eat meat or animal products, that's one of the reasons why, is because for spiritual reasons. And so the other thing that I think is really important in terms of immortality for people to understand is that the work that we're supposed to do, that when we actually come down here on earth, I believe that the whole idea is we have a spiritual curriculum. And before we come down here on earth, the whole idea is we figure out what we're going to look like. Are we going to be tall, dark, and handsome? Are we going to be born in the ghetto? What parents we're going to have? What experiences we're going to have? We have a council of elders that help us decide these things. And when we come down to earth, we're essentially supposed to go through a schooling. And we're supposed to go through a teaching. And there's points of the journey where I ask somebody spiritually, hey, at this point in my journey, if I'm off task, I need you to come in my life. So sometimes that's where you see people come in your life and then they go. And you're wondering, like, this person was amazing to me. Why did they just leave my life? Sometimes you actually made that bond or agreement before you come down here. So what I always tell people is that the highest version of you is attached to the healed version of you. Everything that you deserve in life, the person you love, the person, the amount of money you want to have, the experiences you want to have, all of that is attached to you doing the work that you were designed to do when you came down here to do. Now, if you're off task with that, what happens is we experience struggle. And that struggle is defined as heartbreak, loss, because life is always trying to teach you.
Right.
And the unfortunate thing about most people is they only learn through struggle. Like they don't learn through happy.
That's a
Like
fact.
if you were to see somebody who became a millionaire, but they didn't struggle to get it, they didn't put in the effort to get it, they lose the money very quickly.
Right.
Whereas if you see somebody who put in the work to get there, they can lose the money and get the money back.
Well, I think that kind of goes to the concept that even the man with success can struggle the same way as a man with failure. And it's because people don't know how to cope with boredom.
Yes.
Right. Like, so it's say when you have a child, right, it's best to not try to keep that child constantly entertained. You have to allow that child to learn to cope with boredom, right? Because this is where creativity comes out, right?
Yes.
This is where you learn to deal with those long processes, right? Of waiting and patience and not always needing a stimulant, right? And this is where people learn how to go through the arduous, long journey in life.
Yeah.
Today's children are constantly being stimulated. The child don't know how to be bored. You throw an iPad in front of them and then their brain is going crazy. That's their first drug. So
on dopamine.
You're right, dopamine. But now when you get older, and even with success, success requires the man to go through boredom like he loves it, right? Because you have to go through the process of what's working over and 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 over again. Right. This is why when you see, go look at some of the most successful people in the world, billionaires, they look like boring people. They look like they can sit through boring things over and over and over and over all day long.
Right.
This is why I tell people it's the boring information that's the most valuable. Because that's the information the average person will never get through. Because they need to have everything stimulating them in a way where they feel entertained by it. Right? No, I want that information that I know somebody else is never going to go through, because they don't have the attention span. They don't have the ability to cope with things being boring. That's not spiking up excitement. So I've learned to get excited by the boring things. You know what I'm saying? When I'm learning something new, it excites me. But also, even when I don't like the information and I know that it's valuable, because I wasn't a child that was always thrown things to cut his attention, my mother used to be like, you bored, find something to do. That's up to you. I'm not going to try to figure out how to entertain you through boredom, because now you don't know how to deal with that. Now you feel like you need attention. Now you feel like you need everything to feel great in order for you to go through it. Like, no. Enjoy that process. And there are grown adults who won't do hard work because they get bored by it. So everybody's caught up in this emotional cycle. So for me, this is one thing that I register. It's like somebody going to the gym, you know, that person that can follow that constant regimen and stick to it, that shit is boring. Eating a certain amount of meal prep per day is boring. It's not exciting to the taste buds, but if you do it, you get the results. So it's the man that can go through the boring systems, right, of success, right? Because, and that's why I say the person that's dealing with success, he has to cope with his own boredom, right? When being successful, the same way a man that's going through failure has to, right? So it's when you learn how to have that ability to be stoic throughout life, and stoic through success, and stoic through your failures. Now you have that ability to go through anything in order to get to where you want to be.
And that's the issue, I believe, that social media and a lot of the new technology has created, is this constant need to be stimulated.
Right.
And, you know, like my grandmother said, you need to learn how to be still.
Right.
And a lot of us don't
That's
know
the
how
elders,
to be
man.
still. Like, and that stillness is what creates connection. That stillness is what allows us to tap into source. That stillness is what allows us to see inside of ourselves and actually be a mirror to ourselves. And so we just don't know how to be still.
Man, you said.
And then the other thing, just to piggyback on what we were talking about around
we veggie back over here.
Veggie back.
Yeah, we veggie back over here.
But the veggie back on the immortality, it's also important to understand that.
How do we become immortal, man? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
It's important for us to know and understand, like, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience.
That's a fact.
We're not supposed to live forever. But the other thing, to make that experience longer, it means that you have to have more work to do here, which means that you have to be more spiritual than human while you're here in this experience. And what I found with most people is they're so tapped into their flesh that the flesh is designed to dissolve, and break down. But the more you get tapped into source, the more you get tapped in through music and vibrational music, 432 hertz, the more you get tapped into nature and understanding nature a little bit better. Because one thing that I noticed, like growing up, like everywhere I went, dogs would bark at me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, bark at me, come at me, and I never knew what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But it was because I had this healthy fear of nature that this dog's gonna bite me. But then when I started to get, essentially when I went plant-based, started eating the right way and got more in tune with myself, got more in tune with God, I noticed no dogs bark at me now. Like none. And as a matter of fact, I was spending some time in the country Laos. And there was this, you know, big forest off of the side of the road. So I figured like I'll set up a little tent there, cool out for a little bit. And as I'm cooling out, like, you know, there for about a month, I noticed that some of the animals would start walking by me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought it was so cool because these animals would get so close to
Oh,
me.
you said you had a tent on the side of the road?
So I had this tent that I would pack on my scooter.
Okay.
And so I said, this is a nice little area. It's by a river. There's a waterfall up the way. This is a nice little area
So
to
you
just
was
chill and
camping?
vibrate. Yeah.
Okay.
And so like
I didn't know if you was homeless. I ain't.
Nah.
I didn't know what part of the story or part of the journey we was at.
I've been there.
Yeah.
We can get to that, but nah, this wasn't that part of the story. But as I'm camping out there for like, you know, once a week, again, twice a week, the more I was there, I was noticing animals would just be closer and closer to me. And then when I tried to like bring people to say, I want you to see this shit, like it's crazy. Like I got a deer and got this kind of animal just coming up to the tent, asking me for food. And when I would bring people, they would never come. And so it's literally when you shift your vibration, you start to tap into source. And most people don't understand what they're tapping into. Like I'll give you for instance, when you travel, you're gonna need a different type of plug for a different type of country.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? You may plug in your clippers to this plug, and then it ruins the clippers because the voltage is in the right voltage. So it's really important for us to get tapped into source, which is our spirit/soul, so that we can be tapped into source, and it'll make this journey here not only more pleasant, but it'll make it a longer and more fruitful journey as well too.
Now I believe that 100%. You know, it's like the idea. I think it was Mother Tanetta who talked about it. One of Honorable Elijah Muhammad Wise, and she talked about, you know, being at the age. I think what she say, you should be like spiritually 16 or something like that. Like as far as like your spirit and your energy, like you can't reverse the process of aging, but it does start from a non-physical, non-corporeal level. It starts from the immaterial level. Right? Because, you know, your breath informs the body on movement. You know what I'm saying? And it can control, you know, it can make you more stressed, right? Or it can bring down the levels of the body to be in rest, right? So in that rest and that calmness and that relaxation, and minding your own business, right? Now you're living in your own field of energy unless things are corrupting that. When your day can be disrupted by something that's going on in someone else's life, right? Then that's taking off your life, something that didn't even happen to you, right? This is why minding your own business is important, because when you're constantly caught up in the gossip train, you start mourning people you don't know, right? Like you got to think about that. People at a time in history never mourned people that were 1,000 miles away. Never mourned people that were 500. They didn't know when these people died. They never knew these people. They only mourned people that were literally in their vicinity. Right? Now, people die, and the empathy of a human being got you stressing out, or somebody else bad news across the world. There can be something happening in Japan, and you crying about it or you stressed about it, and it's giving you anxiety, but it will never actually affect you. Right? Human beings are emotional creatures of empathy. And so we've never had that ability to have fast information at first, but this information can affect and impact our daily lives. And this is why it's important to not take in the world, right? Like everything that has nothing to do with you. You know what I'm saying? It's important to understand what has, you know, immediate effect on your life, right? You got young children who be crying because, you know, birds are dying in the Amazon. They're stressing out. They're becoming depressed. They can't figure it out. Like, oh my God, the planet is dying and there's rain, and it's like, but you live a comfy life of privilege. There's no reason for you to be stressed, have anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts about how bad the world is. What about your world? Right? This is one of the primary issues, that human beings don't know how to focus on their own world. Right? And which means that you're focused on globe, right? you definitely not focused on inside.
Yeah.
All of your worries are external issues.
Yeah.
You're not finding internal peace.
Yeah.
Right? So when isolation for elevation, when I start to isolate from the world, nothing is happening.
Yeah.
It's just me. Now what happens is now you get to focus on you. Now you get to see, okay, I'm focused on the world because I want to deal with self.
Yeah.
Right? And when you start to find those real things, your lack of value and finding your joy, your passions and expression, talents, gifts, and skills and purpose, have you focusing on the world as an excuse from dealing with the internal work.
Yes.
Right? So now you feel like, oh, I don't have to do anything because the world is burning.
Yep.
Like, no, you're supposed to cultivate that fire within so you have reason for everything that you do. And now it gives you joy every single day. So I'm not of the subscription, of all of this high level of teen depression every single day.
Yeah.
Because you don't have any reason to be depressed. You live in one of the greatest times on the planet Earth. You have to
Indeed.
find reason to find joy every single day. You have to find gratitude every single day. But the world is aging these young people faster and faster and faster. America and parts of Europe have some of the oldest societies. You know what I'm saying? They're getting old as hell, ain't producing more babies yet. Africa, the place where they say have no resources. Africa, the place where they say ain't got no resources, but they're not utilizing their resources in a matter of advancement in a way the rest of society because everybody's robbing them. Yet they got the youngest population in the world, average age 19 years old. You know what I'm saying? 2053, they're gonna have 2-3 billion people over there.
Yeah.
Right? When I went over there, they lived simply.
Yeah.
All the things we talked about in those blue zones, that's how they're living with less, but they have spiritually more. Right? When you talk about wealth from a status of happiness, peace, and joy, go find me the person that has a lot of happiness, peace, and joy. That person is wealthy.
Yeah.
Go find me the people with a lot of money, but they don't have happiness, peace, and joy.
Yeah.
That person is poor.
Yeah.
Right? And so the
Match your
determinant,
vibration.
yeah, but you gotta have a balance, right?
At Miro Test Lab, it takes more than cutting-edge product design to be the fastest trail running shoe. It takes thousands of hours of testing by elite athletes who embrace the trail's unpredictability, because sane is boring. Learn more at mirotestlab.com.
They used to say happiness doesn't bring money. A new study said, wait a minute, now happiness, bro, money and happiness have a correlation. You know what I'm saying? Because now you can when you figure out more about self, you can do more of the things you love, and there's no impediment in your way. Yeah. So I want to travel to Africa. I got money, let's do that. Instead of I want to go to Africa, now I'm stressing about how to get there, right? So, so a family member has an issue. You know what? I got it. Let me throw you a couple dollars. I don't feel like stressing about it. Don't call me for a while, though. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not about to let that be the stress.
Yeah.
Right?
And money is energy.
Yeah, money is energy.
That's all it is. Like, I think, when people make money the root of all evil, is because of what people do.
It's the love of money that's the root of all evil.
And so it's
money ain't how money be evil. Money is just not to cut your wisdom, but money is it's a vector of energy. You know what I'm saying? Every human being, unfortunately, their value is measured in dollars. Yes. Right? Because those dollars represent energy units. Yes. Right? How many energy units do you have stored? And unfortunately, the Rockefellers and these families figured out how to get people to take real value that they have and exchange it for fake value, things that don't have the same value. So the moment we start taking gold and exchanging it for paper, the human mind was tricked. Yes. Right? This is stored value that's supposed to represent real value, and you're giving this in exchange for paperback dollars. This is what we do every single day. We go exchange our time, our energy, and our emotions for things that have less value than if we just kept those things. Yeah.
And I think what's important to understand is like the currency of life is time right now, because most people are time bound because people are tapped into the wrong source. But if someone says, I'm going to exchange your currency of life, which is time, in exchange for paper dollars, which you can then exchange for a trip or to pay your bills, et cetera, et cetera. People have taken that deal because that's the only deal that they were presented with. And so because people don't understand that time isn't currency, what truly is currency is creation. That's what's really currency. Because if you can create, you can get all the time you want back. That's how you get your time back. Where you take somebody who makes 100,000 over here, but they work 44 hours in a week, and you take somebody over here who make $100,000, but they only work 2 hours in a week.
Mm-hmm.
That means that that person has used creation
Mm-hmm.
to understand how to get their time back. And it's so important that we do that. And I think it's so important as we shift, because I believe that we're in a shifting period. We're going from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see that shift, what you're going to see is a shift from the age of religion,
Mm-hmm.
the age of forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
the age of resurrection,
Mm-hmm.
the age of warring. You're going to
Mhm.
shift from that age to now an age of unity,
Mm-hmm.
age of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is, as we shift, because we have this shift every 26,000 years, because the earth makes a whole procession.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when it goes into that procession in 26,000 years, we have a new golden age. And when we have that golden age, what you experience is a flood of divine light that sheds on this earth. And now what that's going to do is bring up all of the shadow work. So that's why you see all the foolishness happening today.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the world looks like it's in a ride, because divine light is now, in my opinion, flooding the earth.
Right.
So you're going to see people be in disagreement. You're going to see people have these ideologies that don't really match up with life and longevity
Right.
and connection and things of that nature. But I just think it's a transition period. And what I believe that is, the more that we in tune with that transition period, and the more we understand about how we play a role in that spiritually, what we'll see is we'll come into our own divinity in that space and time.
Well, I think people have to learn how you have to make a life decision, right? And the thing about it is, the pressure to make the best decision, you have to alleviate that from yourself. You just have to make a decision,
Yes.
right? Because young people especially think that, you know, the stress of, oh, I need to do this the right way the first time. No, you make a decision, and it gives you a journey to experience.
Yeah.
And then on that journey of experience is experimentation, right?
Yeah.
So you're a scientist. You hypothesize on what you think may be the best, following your gut if you got a good gut. You know what I'm talking about? You know, taking in the resources of information and knowledge, because remember, you have more information and knowledge than any other people at any point in time.
Yep.
But decreasing the necessity for more when you have an answer, right? Saying that, okay, now that I know, I will use this. So let me try this. This experience is going to give you knowledge of self.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm good at this. I'm not good at this. I like this. I don't like this, right? So if you create a notebook, right, where you're studying yourself and you're saying it down, you know, I went through that experience, whether it's courting, whether it's a relationship, and say, you know what, I didn't like this in that relationship, right? Like, you know, I figured I was very attached to this person during this time, right? So now you say, you know what, I don't think I want this in the next one, right? This is what not makes me happy.
Yeah.
Maybe I only did this because of what I seen from my parents' relationship and dynamics, right? Or maybe I was unhealed, so I went with somebody who I know wasn't going to treat me right because I know this wasn't going to last long.
Yeah.
And eventually it's going to come to an end, versus finding somebody who I know is good for me and allowing them to treat me right so that I can have longevity, right? And so same thing with jobs. Oh, I work this job. You know, I don't like actually following instructions. I think I need to be in a leadership position, right? So let me find a job that allows me to exercise that aspect, right? Or let me find a job that allows me to be more creative, right? Or strategic or organized, right? Because we're different people. Some of us are organizers. Some of us are creative. Some of us are action takers. Some of us are people, like I want to talk to people, socialize, network. So by experimenting and finding what you're good at, what you like to do, right, it will bring you joy. It will create and generate passion, and that can give you direction for what to do.
Yep.
But when you don't have life paths and you don't make decisions and you're constantly in this phase of, I don't know, I'm trying to figure it out, right? You're disrespecting the parts of yourself that already have knowledge.
Yes.
Right. So that whole journey of I'm going to go figure myself out is like you're going to lose yourself. Right. The journey of figuring yourself out for most people is the journey where they start dissecting what they already know about themselves. Right. And they forget that part and they completely disregard that. And they put themselves in situations and say, hey, tell me who I am. Right. And that's allowing the world to create decisions and narratives for you. And so you can find yourself in situations that's not for you. Right. And you can start going against self. And that can be traumatic for people. And then you even further go away from who you really are because you're experimenting in environments that had nothing to do with your nature.
Yes.
So when you don't learn how to listen to your heart, you don't learn how to listen to your mind, you find yourself in environments that rob you of your integrity.
Yep.
And it's very hard to get your soul back once you give it away to be a part of something, especially for this experiment you call finding yourself.
Yeah.
Because you already you're a human being. Each human being has a certain genetic code, which means you come with certain epigenetic knowledge encoded into who you are. It means you have certain skills. You already have certain trauma embedded into you
Yeah.
through epigenetic trauma of your parents. And if you just study them first, then you'll know what's in you.
Yeah.
Right? So before you go study a subject in college, study your parents.
Yep.
Right? Study your father. Like, Pops, what you had going on? Did you do drugs? What was your relationship type? Like, what was your fears? Right? What are your strengths, skills, and weaknesses? Now I know what's in me.
Yeah.
Right? Now I know what I'm prone to, what I'm susceptible to, and what are my strengths. Mom, how was you feeling when you had me? What was going on in the world between those ages of 1 through 7 while I was unconscious?
Right.
What was y'all teaching me? What was on TV?
Right.
Study yourself. How was I? What would I do as a baby? What did I like to do? What was I naturally prone to? Right? So you can't disregard the last 18 years, right, of life through your most programmable years from a baby to 25 and then say, okay, I'm about to go find myself.
Yeah.
Like, no, you haven't studied everything that you found about yourself already.
Right.
And so when you give yourself up to the world, you're telling your world, instead of finding yourself, you're telling the world to dictate who you are.
Yeah.
Based on circumstances that I happen to find myself in.
Right. Yeah, and I think that journey of self-discovery is probably the greatest journey that we can, go on. And the unfortunate thing is, like, most people are afraid of it because they understand the amount of shadow work that they have to go through.
Mm-hmm.
I just
So what's your definition of shadow work? Because I find it kind of varies as far as the way that people define it for themselves.
It's parts of ourselves that we've either rejected, disowned, or swept under the rug.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the parts of us that we were essentially sit here to experience
Mm-hmm.
and then learn from.
Mm-hmm.
And so the work comes into play when we understand why we had to go through that.
Mm-hmm.
The work comes into place when we have to revisit either the experience or the people that were involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a case, and for instance, I just wrote a new book called Life is My Guru. And in the book, I'm talking about an experience that I went through with my mom. I had to, I was, raised in my mom's house. Even though my father was always there in my life, I was raised in a single parent house. And my mom didn't make the best choices in men, so I had to fight grown men off of my mom. And one of the experiences was really traumatic for me. Imagine a 12-year-old having to fight a grown man. And I remember, like, tallying up all the work that I felt like I needed to revisit. And one of the stories I wanted to revisit with my mom. And as I'm telling her the story to have the conversation, one of the fears that I had was, if I tell her this, she's going to tell me it didn't happen that way. It's going to piss me off. And so I got over that, had the conversation with her. Boom. She says it didn't happen that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm infuriated. So I called my sister and I say, hey, do you remember when this happened? And she said, yes. I said, tell me how it happened. She told me exactly how it happened the way my mom told me. So at that moment, I had to ask myself, why did I tell myself this version of the story?
The groundbreaking Audible original series is back.
Every time I shut my eyes, I feel it.
Every newborn vampire has at least one weakness, a life they left behind.
Who are you? What do you want with Darcy?
Am I gonna die here?
Hear your heart stop. Listen at audible.com/impactwinter or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't move. Don't scream.
You see what I'm saying? And so as I began to unpack that, what I had to tell myself was, I told myself that version of the story because that was the way I protected myself. You understand? And for me to get over that, it helped me rebuild a relationship with my mom. You understand? So that's what true shadow work is. And most people don't want to do that work. I mean, I just gave you the example because they don't want to go through
Yeah, it's
fear of
tough.
rejection, et cetera, et cetera.
Those tough emotions.
It's tough emotions to deal with, but being able to dive into those sort of parts of ourselves that we've disowned and disconnected from, those are the parts of ourselves that are going to allow us to experience moving forward love on a different level, compassion on a different level, the ability to connect with people. And now my ability to connect with people is very different now.
Yeah, no, your healed version of you is a completely different person than a person that's unhealed and still operating from a programmed place of trauma.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you are very clear about what you want and what you don't want and what aligns with you and what doesn't align with you. And that voice in your head is right there saying that you don't want to do this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then that healed version be like, we not doing this since I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Versus a person that's a people pleaser, right? Because they were told that they were a nice child and they didn't want to disrespect the image that was constantly thrown on them. Right? Or the person that was told that they were a bad kid, so they always was rebellious against everybody, right? Like, you as an adult is really you as a child, right? You just biologically became grown, right? Or more mature, but psychologically you maintain at that same level.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny because I was listening to a young brother, I don't know his name at all. It was just a clip on TikTok or whatever, but he said something profound. And he was explaining why people, when you consider yourself to be one of the chosen ones or one of the healed ones or one of the light bearers or bringers, whatever, while other people around you don't like it. Now, I talk about this a lot. You know, when people too close to the light, they get blinded by it.
Yeah.
But not only too close to the light, they get blinded by it, they get exposed.
Yeah, the
right?
shadows come out.
When your light exposes you to yourself, right? That's doing the shadow work, right? And what it does is it forces you to grow in areas that were stunted, right? It forces you to strengthen the areas that were weak. And you're always this person that's constantly growing and progressing, right? That's different than people around you. When you see a person, every time you talk to this person, man, they always got something new, always building something, always growing. They're just more advanced than you've seen them. You see them constantly evolving, while most of society is declining or stagnant. So what happens when you come in their environment as well, they're exposing your light as well, or your darkness, right? So it's like, you don't want to be around a pastor because you feel like he's too holy, because it's like, come on, pastor, you got me looking at myself now. I'm thinking about all the things that I be doing wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's the same thing when a person that has that light and that energy around you and that's constantly growing, now you're exposing them and they feel like you can see them, right? And so now they get mad at you, so they want to try to expose your faults. They want to try to sabotage you, right? Because they like, how dare you make me feel like this? You make me feel inferior. But it's not their fault. It's what you haven't worked on.
Yes.
Right? And it's the parts of you that you're not exposing to yourself to build and progress, because you decided to be stagnant in your progress. And this person says, I won't accept stagnation, only progress, only growth. So you have to be careful when you're doing work and you're progressing, because you're not only shedding the light within, that light is now becoming a flashlight shedding on everybody else. And it can create hatred, right? It can create jealousy, it can create envy, and those people may want to attack you. You know what I'm saying? So being a light bearer, and illuminating light everywhere you go comes with this responsibility of understanding the reactivity towards that light as well.
Yeah, 100%, because the light is awareness. That's what the light for many people, you're going to help them. And for other people, you're going to make it worse.
Yeah.
And so you have to choose your company very, discreetly for that reason. And I think the other thing that's really important that you tapped in on was that, the healed version of you and the unhealed version of you made two totally different decisions in life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always tell people when I ask them, like, what can I get you to do to start eating better for yourself,
Mhm.
taking care of yourself better? And I'll ask them, well, why can't you stop eating that, even though you know it's killing you? And they'll say, well, you got to die of something. And I always tell them, I'm like, that is a very, very dark way to look at life.
It's a poor way of looking at
Yeah.
life.
And the unfortunate thing
That's
is,
like saying somebody got to be broke.
yeah, that's exactly what it is. And what I always tell them, I was like, I want you to think about this one decision, because I believe that food is also, your choices in food is an act of love too.
Mm-hmm.
When you eat something healthy, you be like, I'm on my shit today.
Mm-hmm.
When you eat something horrible, you like, it tastes good, but damn, I feel bad that I ate this. So it's really important for us to understand that's a constant assault on us too. Because each time we're eating something that tastes good, but it's bad for us, we're constantly telling ourselves, I don't love you.
Mm.
Because especially, you got high blood pressure and you eating all this food that has a whole bunch of salt in it, that is processed, that has a whole bunch of monosodium glutamate and things of that nature. Like, on a subconscious level, you're telling yourself, I'm not good enough to make the right choices.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you flip that on the other side, what does it look like when you start to make choices that are loving, that are choices that are in your benefit, that are nourishing to you? What is that telling yourself subconsciously? Because we all know when you get sad, when you get depressed, it can have a physical impact on your body. When you get sad and depressed, you can get ulcers. When you get sad and depressed, you can have gut issues. When you get sad and depressed, it can lead to high blood pressure, etc. Well, let's look on the other side of that. Because then if we can make ourselves unhealthy by the thoughts that we choose, then we can make ourselves healthy by the thoughts that we choose.
And what do we say when that happens? We feel what? Lighter.
Yeah, indeed.
You know what I'm saying?
Indeed.
Because you illuminating that good light now.
Yeah,
you know
and that's a wonderful point, because I also believe that the more light you become, the more in spirit you become.
Yeah.
The more you lose that light, the more you become into this body, which of course is destined for the ground.
That's the literal enlightenment, right? It's light inside the body and mind.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're illuminated with truth. Right?
Indeed.
You can see things as they are, right? You're able to unlift the veil of reality. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not stuck in the shadow realm or in the dark, right? And there's only a certain percentage of people that can see things for the way that they actually are.
Yeah.
Everybody else is stuck by the perception that they're sold, right? So there's masters of illusion that give the world, right, their reality. And then there's people that know how to pierce the veil and see things. Man, I see what's on the news.
Yeah.
I can look at a person and see who they are.
Yes.
But I can only see as far as I see inside myself.
Yeah.
And so I recognize that. So as I heal parts of myself, you actually become a messenger of light, which is a messenger of truth, was basically saying, now I know how to help you heal that. But when a person isn't ready, they don't want to be around nobody, because what you're doing is exposing them.
Yeah.
So that's why you have to be careful during your growth process to not just walk around exposing everybody else, because you've healed.
Yeah.
So it's like, bro, I start eating better. I know why you sick. You eating what I used to eat. Right. And they like, bro, I ain't ready for all that, man. I don't want you to put me on all that goddamn healthy stuff, man. Got me. I want to smoke a little blood, eat some bacon, chill, and drink my little coca leaf. You know what I mean? My Coca-Cola. So you got to be careful, because it's a way you go about helping people.
Yeah.
Allow that light to be in you, right? Allow yourself to be an expression of truth. Yeah. And then watch others observe it.
Yeah.
Because we have mirror neurons. We're going to want to mirror the superior, right? We mirror the alpha that's in the room, right? Because they like, wait a minute, bruh, alpha, all the girls looking at him. Maybe I should do a little bit of what he doing. Let me get my stuff together, man. Wait a minute. He cracking them jokes. They like that. Hey, I got something funny to say too. You feel me? Bro over here healed. Hey, ladies, I've been through my shadow work. You know, You know, I did the work now, sister. You feel me? So they gonna want to do the same thing. So it's a poor way of looking at life.
And the unfortunate thing
That's
is,
like saying somebody got to be broke.
yeah, that's exactly what it is. And what I always tell them, I was like, I want you to think about this one decision, because I believe that food is also, your choices in food is an act of love too.
Mm-hmm.
When you eat something healthy, you be like, I'm on my shit today.
Mm-hmm.
When you eat something horrible, you like, it tastes good, but damn, I feel bad that I ate this. So it's really important for us to understand that's a constant assault on us too. Because each time we're eating something that tastes good, but it's bad for us, we're constantly telling ourselves, I don't love you. Because especially, you got high blood pressure and you know you eating all this food that has a whole bunch of salt in it, that is processed, that has a whole bunch of monosodium glutamate and things of that nature. Like, on a subconscious level, you're telling yourself, I'm not good enough to make the right choices. Now, if you flip that on the other side, what does it look like when you start to make choices that are loving, that choices that are in your benefit, that are nourishing to you? What is that telling yourself subconsciously? Because we all know when you get sad, when you get depressed, it can have a physical impact on your body. When you get sad and depressed, you can get ulcers. When you get sad and depressed, you can have gut issues. When you get sad and depressed, it can lead to high blood pressure, etc. Well, let's look on the other side of that. Because then if we can make ourselves unhealthy by the thoughts that we choose, then we can make ourselves healthy by the thoughts that we choose.
And what do we say when that happens? We feel what? Lighter.
Yeah, indeed.
You know what I'm saying?
Indeed.
Because you illuminating that good light now.
Yeah,
you know
and that's a wonderful point, because I also believe that the more light you become, the more in spirit you become.
Yeah.
The more you lose that light, the more you become into this body, which of course is destined for the ground.
That's the literal enlightenment, right? It's light inside the body and mind.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're illuminated with truth, right?
Indeed.
You can see things as they are, right? You're able to unlift the veil of reality. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not stuck in the shadow realm or in the dark, right? And there's only a certain percentage of people that can see things for the way that they actually are.
Yeah.
Everybody else is stuck by the perception that they're sold, right? So there's masters of illusion that give the world, right, their reality. And then there's people that know how to pierce the veil and see things. Man, I see what's on the news.
Yeah.
I can look at a person and see who they are.
Yes.
But I can only see as far as I see inside myself.
Yeah.
And so I recognize that. So as I heal parts of myself, you actually become a messenger of light, which is a messenger of truth, was basically saying, now I know how to help you heal that. But when a person isn't ready, they don't want to be around nobody, because what you're doing is exposing them.
Yeah.
So that's why you have to be careful during your growth process to not just walk around exposing everybody else, because you've healed.
Yeah.
So it's like, bro, I start eating better. I know why you sick. You eating what I used to eat. Right. And they like, bro, I ain't ready for all that, man. I don't want you to put me on all that goddamn healthy stuff, man. Got me. I want to smoke a little blood, eat some bacon, chill, and drink my little coca leaf. You know what I mean? My Coca-Cola. So you got to be careful, because it's a way you go about helping people.
Yeah.
Allow that light to be in you, right? Allow yourself to be an expression of truth. Yeah. And then watch others observe it.
Yeah.
Because we have mirror neurons. We're going to want to mirror the superior, right? We mirror the alpha that's in the room, right? Because they like, wait a minute, bruh, alpha, all the girls looking at him. Maybe I should do a little bit of what he doing. Let me get my stuff together, man. Wait a minute. He cracking them jokes. They like that. Hey, I got something funny to say too. You feel me? Bro over here healed. Hey, ladies, I've been through my shadow work. You know, I did the work now, sister. You feel me? So they gonna want to do the same thing. So all you got to do is lead by example. Yeah. And a lot of people can't do that, because, you know, everybody is different. So some people are communicators. Some people lead through expression, right? Some people try to convince people in other ways.
Yeah.
Family, I will pay you to get your shit together. But you can't do anything for a person that's not ready.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And I learned, I learned it through the movie The Matrix. For
Mhm.
me, the movie The Matrix
Greatest movie of all. Listen,
is a documentary, not a movie.
Brother right here is phenomenal because he took a skill set that he had, put himself and his family on. A skill set that he teaches many other people. Everybody can't teach trading like my brother teaches. This is why you see him with the celebrities and why you see him with successful students. Not only that, if you're having a hard time, the brother actually shows you all the trades that he's making at 5,000 plus per day on. It's not one of them, oh, I'm gonna tell you I can do it. It's one of those, I'm gonna show you I can do it, and you can do it right along with me. So if there's somebody that wants to fire their job, pick up a new skill, this is my brother to tap in, the Honey Drip Network. Make sure y'all tap in. Y'all can get into the Discord for a low monthly, and you can change your family trajectory just like that.
Investing in about 2016, self-taught myself how to invest, became a millionaire before I left. Made my first 6 figures when I was 21, made my first $500,000 when I was 22, and made my first $1 million when I was 23, and then now I'm 8 figures plus in business and investments. So I'm 27 years old, so I've been a millionaire for about 4 years, and I have a lot of game to give y'all. That's what I like to do.
I got a brother over here. His name is Solomon. He is behind the camera. You know what I'm saying? He said Matrix is overrated. I said, first of all, brother, no disrespect. I ain't trying to put you on the spotlight, but we'll put you on the spotlight. I ain't tell what your last name is, so they don't know. But the Matrix movie, the reason why it can't be overrated, right? Because you can only overrate it in hindsight, right? You can only look at after every movie that was created and every industry that was created and after the world was shifted because of it.
Yes.
Right? And then look back and say, this movie ain't wasn't all that. It changed cinema, right? Cinematically, they start doing the, you feel me? Start doing the slow motion. Then it changed the philosophy. It's actually the most impactful movie ever. And the most important cinematic, most important cinema ever to exist, because The Matrix was a philosophy, it was a documentary, right? And it was a code that those who have the eyes to see utilize when they viewed, and everybody's seeing it from different levels based on your level of conscious observation.
Yeah.
Right. So when I seen it, I gazed it from the eyes of being taught from a child, you know, about this world being a matrix through the teachings of Elijah Muhammad.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, the Smiths, those the devils, that's the ones, that's me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And this the gatekeepers, and this is how the world is moved when you got the knowledge of self, and they try to. So I seen myself through the movie, and it was like a validation. And I think that there's some people who took it as entertainment, and everybody else was like, this is the message to the world.
Yeah. Or anybody who is a light bearer.
Yeah.
That's essentially what if you're bringing light into the world, or
it activated people.
It is a blueprint. Like, whenever I see somebody shift in their life, in the food choices and what they read, the music they listen to, when you go through that shift, it is going to be confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Because that light is going to remove a lot of people from your life.
Mm-hmm.
And what the movie teaches you is that what Morpheus says, like when Neo's in the program, he's teaching you, like, I'm trying to show you, I know you saw the woman in the red dress, but look behind you. Smith's right there with a gun. He's like, I'm trying to prove to you, anybody who is still in the matrix, they are an enemy of you.
That's a fact.
And so it doesn't matter how much light you shine, it's only going to encourage them to come towards you. What you see in the movie, the more light he shines, the more they can find him. You understand? And so for me, when I tell you that movie was literally the blueprint for, you know, me going from eating meat every day, 3 times a day, being angry all the time, to now doing yoga, something I never thought I would do, to meditation, to wanting to help and serve people. Like, the word serve was just always on my mind. Like, that shift, when you go through that type of shift, there really isn't like enough mentors there to tell you, look, you're going to lose family members, you're going to lose friends. There's going to be a lot of alone time, and this is how you handle it.
Right.
And for me, that movie was like a blueprint, you know. And when I was in Egypt, I saw you went to Egypt as well.
Yeah.
I met this brother while I'm just walking around, because initially I didn't want to do any tours. And I met this brother who was an elder there. And he said, I'm going to show you around. I don't want any money. And I was very surprised by that. So when he started showing me around, he would take me into the pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, I want to give you a poem. And it was called The Light. And it was Yakini, Yakini, the light surrounds me. Yakini, Yakini, light goes through me. Yakini, Yakini, I am the light. And he wouldn't tell me what it meant. And then years later, I understood what it meant. Our perception as we grow and evolve is initially the light I want to become is just surrounding me. I just want it. And then at some point, you feel it go through you. So you'll say, I'm a vessel of the light. You know, when you get those moments, you're like, I know that didn't come from me. You think it just went through you. But eventually, you're going to realize you are the light. And so for me, like the movie really taught me that. And it showed me like, okay, if I'm the light, then how can I live from that light instead of, you know, essentially look at it as something I need to become.
Right.
Have you ever tried plant medicine? Everyone seems to be talking about ayahuasca or mushrooms, psilocybin, and magic chocolate today. But what exactly is plant medicine doing? Now, I can tell you this. I've been on ayahuasca journeys. I've tried mushrooms, psilocybin, and I've experienced transformative results. I get what people are talking about, but these substances are illegal in many parts of the world, and there are some risk associated with them. As I went deeper into this exploration, interviewing many leading experts in the field, one of the things that became very apparent is that it's not the plant itself. It is how your brain is reacting to the chemistry of that plant. But what if you can take away the plant and just train your brain to directly produce the chemicals and the brain frequencies that are necessary for you to experience these altered states? Many people have trained themselves to do this. Wim Hof, when I interviewed him, claimed that he could generate any type of biochemistry in his body at will. He didn't need any plant medicine. I also am friends with the great hypnotherapist Paul McKenna, who says that through a concept called vivification, he can induce in anyone the feelings that they have in plant medicine without the actual substance. You see, it's not the plant, it's your brain's response. Dabbling with plant medicine, I've seen people and habits, dangerous habits like smoking or vaping. I've seen people have incredible healings. I've seen people have incredible epiphanies, inspiration, and ideas. But I've also seen people do all three, ending bad habits, incredible healings, incredible epiphanies and ideas, even incredible manifestations without plants by them learning how to tap into altered states through a specific protocol invented by the late Jose Silva. Now, the Silva method is absolutely mind-blowing. I know because I've been doing it since I was 14. As an entrepreneur, it helped me build a business with over $100 million in revenue. And it wasn't just me. People have used this protocol to do incredible things. The writer Richard Bach claimed that it helped him finish his book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, which made the cover of Time magazine. Then there was the Chicago White Sox that claimed that this protocol helped them improve their batting average. And one of the craziest stories is this lady called Helen Hadsell, who used this protocol and started winning every competition she took part in. In her rural town in Texas, people started thinking she was a witch. So if you find this interesting and you'd like to learn how to tap into altered states of consciousness, specifically the alpha level, theta level, and delta levels of mind, and use these to create incredible results in your life, watch the video that's about to start next, because it is going to blow you away.
Hey guys, welcome to Forward. We're a new type of doctor's office that's providing preventative primary care. We've got world-class doctors supported by the most advanced medical technology. Now, one of the really cool things about Forward is you can schedule same-day visits, there's no wait times, and we don't charge copays. So after your self-service check-in, then you're gonna head back to our biometric body scanner. Now, the body scanner's purpose is to track trends, monitor progress, but also identify health risks earlier. Here, check it out. So this is it, and I'm super excited to show it to you guys today. All I'm going to do is just step onto the scanner like so. Next, I'm going to tap into our demo account. I'm going to choose my sex. And what it's first doing is it's creating and building.
You ever done psychedelics?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
I've done ayahuasca.
Tell me about this ayahuasca trip, brother.
Yeah, so I went to Peru. That was
I knew it. You was in Peru getting it done.
Yes, I was in Peru, and
coca leaves, ayahuasca. It was a vibe, huh?
It was a vibe, and I went down there because I had saw this movie called The Last Shaman.
Mm-hmm.
Now in the movie, you see some people like there's a person who died from taking the ayahuasca, and what I believe is if you're not ready for that, you should not do it.
Right.
And
So
ready means if you have not done some of the work.
Can you explain to people what ayahuasca is and like the process of readying and preparing yourself for it?
Yeah. So the first thing first, you don't prepare it. Get you a shaman who really does it, who prepares it from barks and leaves. It really comes from a bark. Okay. And so it's a combination of barks and some other herbs. Okay. And they make it into a drink. Okay. And at night, you have to do this the same way if you were to do mushrooms, you got to do it in nature. A lot of people, when they do mushrooms, they'll do it in like an environment like this and they don't have a good experience.
Right.
And it's not made for that. And so it's a ceremony. We're all in white. There's about 9 of us. And you drink it. And initially, like for some people, nothing happens. And then eventually it happens. And that happening can be different for everybody. For me, like I saw my ancestors. And what I mean by that is when people ask me my ideals on life, I tell them that I believe that before we come down here, we create a spiritual curriculum for ourselves for this lifetime. And there's a council of elders that help us decide those things. And some of them never want to come here. Like they look at us as brave for coming here. So like, that's why I had that experience with ayahuasca, where my elders was telling me what my life plan was, why I came here, why the experiences I need to have. I had a cousin that died when I was about 13 years old. That was very traumatic for me. They told me why that happened. I needed to know that because I couldn't move on in certain ways in my emotional body without knowing that. And so for me, like that was the experience I had. And but for other people, I heard people screaming. Like that was not my experience. But I also believe that if you think that ayahuasca is going to do the work for you or any other psychedelic is going to do the work for you, I don't think it works like that.
That's very interesting, especially with ayahuasca. We've seen a lot of different people who've taken it. I haven't done the experience, but a lot of different people who've taken it, from celebrities to just regular people, all talk about the same or similar experience, right? Whether it's ancestors or whether they believe that they are literally in the presence of God. Right. And the same chemicals that activate in the ayahuasca is already in our brain, the DMT.
Yes.
You understand me? And so this DMT experience, that induced experience that people have, is the increase, right? It is what really gives us imagination and our intuition. And, the pineal and the third eye is a real thing. It's not a
connection to source.
Right. It's not I think people think about like the pineal gland. It's like this abstract spiritual thing sometimes, right? It's just your brain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Your third eye is your brain. It's not a fake thing. But it's like when people go through those experiences, it's a great shedding. And the voices that you hear through these experiences are very loud.
Yeah.
Right? Loud in a way where you can't make this up, right? Even a person with little knowledge has similar to the same experience as somebody else who's well studied on it.
Yeah.
Right? Which means that it's not curated by just your imagination. Right? This is something that's happening inside the human being where you become disconnected from the material flesh that you are.
Yeah.
Right? You hop out the driver's seat of the body, right? And then you hop into the seat of the soul.
Yeah.
Right? And in this dimension is completely different than the dimension that we live in every single day. Because you have to understand that this reality requires a lot of energy all the time.
Yeah.
To keep this fragment of a picture, these colors pixelated, right? To be able to move. Like, this is why they're having a hard time creating AI robots to move, even walk like human beings.
Yeah.
Think about, like, when you see them spending $1 billion to create a robot that can walk like a human being, think about how powerful the process that you have to do it subconsciously.
Yeah.
Right? That you just doing is easy. You're carrying motion. Then you have to have all of these motions, sensors detecting things at all times.
Yep.
Then you have this storehouse of memory, that some of these memories are constantly charged up when they're not supposed to be popping up, but they're constantly in the forefront of your head.
Yeah.
Imagine a machine was like that, where the computer, instead of doing work, there's this memory where it just keep popping up. You know what I'm saying? Where it's supposed to be moving, flowing, and you supposed to be on Microsoft Word or something.
Right.
But instead, it's popping up the time where you was download illegal software, and that was 10 years ago. But damn, man, you got to keep Xing it out and keep Xing it out because the memory of the computer. But computers are not like that, right? But human beings are. So in lieu of you having to do all of these functions to move through the world, to think, to utilize intuition, creativity, passion, focus, right? To hold all of your identity and who you are, in lieu of you also expressing that as you move throughout the world, your character, like human beings are the most complex entities on the planet Earth.
Yeah.
And so we study outside ourselves a lot, which is disrespectful to the complexity of that who we are.
Indeed.
Right. So when we talk about ayahuasca experiences, that's an experience in a different dimension. Because the 3D dimension that we light up to experience in this is for survival.
Yep.
Right. But that dimension, that's thriving. That is a higher experience. It has nothing to do with jobs, has nothing to do with work, has nothing to do with industries, capitalism, global politics. That is the experience of true self.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't just have to go through DMT to have that experience. You can live in the way, right, of experiencing true self. But what we have to do as human beings, because we're constantly distracted, is we can't get to that part of self.
Yeah.
Right? Remember, there's a kid somewhere focusing on greenhouse gases in Amazon. You think they're going to have a connection to self? Hell no. Right? But we're now developing into the next generation where it's all about internal, right? It's all about this generation where they are connected to their gamma wave, to where they're high level, they're emotionally resilient, their antennas and their awareness is highly connected. And all of the things that the world has been doing over the last hundreds of years to force people into becoming farmed as workers for industries from families that figured out way to create products and capitalism, the next generation is becoming completely detached from that and saying that has completely zero to do with life. And it's hard to get that children where they trying to make fun of the millennials and Gen Z, but it's like industrialized eras created human being in society and the way we eat, talk, drink, and live life, laugh, and experience emotions and relationships. And the next generation, like, bro, all that's BS.
Yep.
Think about it. They in the 70s, when people was experiencing a psychedelic revolution, like I'm gonna do a whole high level on the future of psychedelics, right? The deep dive, especially when it comes to the shamanic practices and rituals, and scientists are now regarding those same things to be held in true as they do their case studies, right?
Yeah.
But in the 70s, they were trying to stop that psychedelic revolution because they believed that drugs was going to bring that about, right? People detaching from government structures, powers, and systems. But this naturally happened, right? We talk about going into different ages. There's certain things that man cannot suppress for too long. The body wants to express itself. The soul wants to express itself. The spirit wants to be free, right? And so human beings have a natural inclination towards nature and freedom, right? And what does that freedom start to look like? So you have to be careful making fun of the millennials and the Gen Z and Gen X and all of those, because these are a generation who are experiencing what it's like to be a human being, and they're going through a detox of everything that their grandparents and everything that's in their DNA, and you're experiencing the flushing of those toxins, those mental toxins, right? And trying to let go of it. But they're also susceptible to new narratives that's being pushed on them because they understand what this generation is going through.
Yeah.
Right. So these new narratives is creating a new industry. Say, oh, they're emotional right now. Well, let's push emotional narratives. Right. Let's push new agendas onto their mainframe.
Yeah.
Right. But you have to be careful and ask, where did that come from as well?
Yeah. And I think that the thing is, it's like you have a thought leads to an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
An emotion leads to a response, and a response leads to a reaction, and that will essentially create a pattern. And I think what's happening is when you look at the powers that be, they're just trying to create a pattern, and they're trying to keep people stuck in a pattern. So they're keeping you stuck on one particular emotion like fear. They're keeping you stuck on one particular emotion like self-deprecation. They're trying to keep us in these lower states of emotion so that we don't raise our vibration. So on one end of the coin, it's very good that we're being tap back into those emotions, because when you look at our grandparents, they weren't that emotional. But now you look at this generation that's coming up, they may be too overly emotional without the control system to control which emotions I tap into and which emotions that I allow myself to always be over control. Because when you look at the systems and the social media today, they're always tapping into certain emotions. And I always tell people that emotional body can create dis-ease in your body too. Like, you take a person who has a lot of anger lives in the liver. So those people are going to have issues with their liver. You see what I'm saying? So it just depends on how you control. It's very important that you control which emotions that you tap into, because emotions are vibrations, and vibrations create frequencies.
You know, that's powerful, because, you know, it was said that men of early days used to attach their morals to their failures, right? So, you know, meaning that when a man would fail at a business, that societally, his reputation was seen as a bad person to associate with, to be around, right? And then he would have a self-deprecating view of self, right? To where they would have to go and get mental assistance, you know what I mean? Because, oh, you failed at this, now you're viewed as bad and it must be something wrong with you, right? That was early years of business and capitalism and like entrepreneurship. You know, that community of people, like white folks, they got over that, right? Failure is nothing to them. They look at failure. You supposed to fail, you know what I mean? That startup, you get back in the game, you keep going. We're fresh in it. So we're where they were hundreds of years ago, trying to spark industries and entrepreneurship. So when somebody fails, right, it becomes a moral attachment. Oh, you must be a bad person. You must be a scammer, or this, that, and the third, right? Because we are attaching a moral equivalent, right, to success and failure. Also, when a person succeeds, they must be good, right? Has nothing to do with whether that person is morally good or righteous at all, right? So this is how we move in society. We start attaching immoral and emotional equivalents to success and failure. And this is why I talk about stoicness, right? This is why I talk about the boringness, right? These are those points in life where you can be in flow, right? And it doesn't have to feel like something in order for you to be in flow. You can be the greatest player in the world in the NBA, just won a championship, and society forces you to say you should feel like this afterwards. Or if you have the worst game and you don't feel super bad, oh, why don't you feel bad? It's like, no, when you are in flow state, be in the calmness, right? And when you learn how to live in that state, that's when you can be a person that has success consistently, right? And be careful of attaching your emotions to the world standards. Be careful of attaching your morals to the world standards, right? Because I know when new industries pop up, there are cycles. So there are cycles of how people feel about themselves. There's cycles about how society reacts. It's cycles about how you will interact. So I look at our community, brown people, you know, we are an adolescence phase of industry building and system building. We are adolescence phases, so we have to study the cycles that other people went through when they're in this same phase. Right? And now I look at it from a 360 view, and I'm like, oh, this is why these things are happening. This is why this person is being attacked like this or that and the third. It's just because we're in an adolescent phase of this new industries being built out. And when other people went through the same phases, the exact thing happened.
That make a lot of sense.
You know? So same thing with your life cycles. Like, you're not the first person to go through health phases and spiritual phases. It's like studying the world, studying previous things, which early people did not have the ability. They were passed down information through elders. Hey, baby, this is what's going on. Hey, baby, these are the elixirs you use for this. Hey, baby, this is that herb and that herb. Hey, baby, this is how you deal with, relationships and things of that nature. But because it's not passed in the family, right? Which that family had a specific knowledge that was in tune with your DNA. That was the importance of it. It was personalized wisdom and customized wisdom that your father was like this, your mother was like this. So baby, when you go through this, that's just because of what your stock. Our family has always been like this. But now people are learning from other people's families right? And hoping that it actually applies to the customized knowledge of what they got passed down in their epigenetics.
Right. And you made a good point there, because that's the disconnection with ancestrals, connection. It's like what I believe that what we don't understand is not just the lessons we don't get, like from them being passed down. There's a possibility that the ancestor who could be teaching you something is you. Like that ancestor could be you, and you could be having another lifetime right now in this moment.
Oh, that's deep right there.
And they're trying to give you the path to move forward, because it's all about moving forward and evolving. And so when we could disconnect ourselves from our ancestors, we lose that ability to move forward. And I believe that that's one of the things that they stole from us. And they intentionally stole from us our ancestral connection, because what you'll notice is all of the last presidents have been the same families. They're from the same bloodline.
Right.
Okay, they understand ancestral connection. Okay, but they made sure that we disconnected from that because they understand the importance of it. And because we no longer understand the importance of it, we don't always get the benefit of it. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's so important that we start to reconnect with those things that were so important to us before. And we don't always have to have the understanding of why they were important.
Right.
You know, a lot of times it takes experiencing it to actually see why it's important.
I mean, it's very evident, because you talked about bloodlines, right? So when you talk about them ancestral connections as bloodlines, right? The blood is very important. Being able to think about blood as, a liquid transfer of information. You know what I'm saying? It's electricity. And inside that blood, you have, DNA, right? And that AGTC, all of that has certain expressions that you're automatically encoded with being passed down, right? So when you talk about the blood of your mother and the blood of your father, it's different, right? You can have mental transference of ideas, right? That become a sort of, metaphysical bloodline, right? Following those same ideas, but in the blood, it's information, right? That you don't even have to be taught, and it's passed down because that's what's in your father and that's what's in your mother.
Right.
And it's like there's a practice now where celebrities are getting blood from young people, right? And like there was a time where blood was never shared like the way it's being shared today, right? They're trying to live forever, so you got certain celebrities that are, practicing, and there's certain companies that are cultivating blood and they're selling it for a certain price, right? So that you can try to reverse the aging process. And this mixture of the bloods of the planet Earth, right? It's an interesting science experiment, because when you think about the information that's being passed down, that's a very vampiric society, right? Like, there used to be societies of cannibals. There was societies of what people consider to be vampires. Because of the obsession with bloodlines, there's societies of, the so-called king had his coronation because their bloodline is supposed to be, whatever the hell that's supposed to be over there. Do you feel me? But it's like, imagine if you had that level of respect and honor to your own bloodline.
Right.
It would change who you ever talk to. Right? You see your bloodline is royal. You wouldn't even mate with certain people. People hate their baby mothers and baby fathers. Right? But imagine if you like, oh, man, I come from royal stock. I'm not messing my blood with a peasant.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, girl, your family got issues and problems. I can't consummate this. I can't have sex with you, because what if you have my baby? And I don't want that to be a new bloodline.
Right.
But when you think like that, what it automatically do is it projects your thoughts into the future. Right. And now it incurs a responsibility beyond the moment of what we're about to do, which is this satisfaction of lust, to extending self, right? Which is another level of immortality, right? Because while some people, are thinking about immortality through, and it used to be through the extension of bloodlines, right? As long as your blood is flowing, you're immortal because you live inside that DNA. So you extend yourself to your son. Your son is extended to his son, and so on and so forth, right? And you can populate the world from, one couple that can have offsprings of thousands to millions of people. That's an extension of immortality. I don't need to be physically here, right? Spiritually and metaphysically, I'm here. Then there's immortality through legacy.
Yep.
The observation of my consciousness and my previous presence and my spirit lives on through the tongue of those who speak my name, and lives on in the consciousness and lives through the impact of my energy that I left as a signature of the work that I've done while I was here. Right? So when you stop becoming spiritual, then you want immortality through the physical, right? But we are spiritual people, which is why we've always poured out libation for the ancestors, because the presence of them is not around us, it's in us. Right? And when I look at my brother, you have an ancestral line that's in you. So I'm looking at ancestors as I'm looking at you, because you have the genetic makeup of the last 1,000 ancestors that you come from.
Yeah, and you know, my thing is that as I evolve, and I hope others are evolving too, is that, you know, man, you know, what we've found through the genome is that there's an actual spirit gene. And what that means for us is this: we pass on ourselves through spirit, but spirit is not time bound. So I even think for, like, you know, my children of the future, like, I think for myself, like, what I continue to do will also impact them. And so what I continue to connect in my spirit will also connect in their spirit as well too.
Right.
And I just hope that we understand the impact of doing the work while we're here on this earth. Because, you know, like, I also believe that when you don't do it, one, you struggle, and when you don't do it, you're gonna have to repeat. And I think that's why a lot of people end up having these repeat experiences. Like, you know, for a woman who keeps getting the same type of man coming into her life, it's because you haven't learned the lesson. And the energy and the vibration that you're on is only attracting that, because that's the lesson that you haven't achieved in life.
So wait a minute, because what is a spirit gene exactly?
Okay, so like a lot of what they broke down when they went through the DNA, they considered junk DNA initially. But as they started to unravel and understand it a little bit better, they started to understand that there was something that was a little bit more, I guess the best way to kind of explain it was more like quantum mechanics. It was something that they really couldn't explain that was tapped into more of another dimension. And for me, the only way I can explain that is his spirit. And so, like, it's like I said initially, like, I believe that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, not human beings having a spiritual experience. And with that being said, I believe that we come into this form to experience limitation, because the spirit is unlimited. And so we come into the human body to experience limitation. And that limitation is set up based upon what we want it to be. And so with that being said, well, where does the spirit reside? Because when we die, guess what? You know, if you weigh us before we died and you weigh us right after we died, we weigh the same amount of weight. So where does the spirit live? It lives in the DNA.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And when the body is no longer a vehicle, then that spirit lifts up, it ascends up out of us and goes into a new experience.
Holistic doctor. My doctor ain't never told me that before.
Yeah, and that's what it's about. Like, the way I look at things is that, man, we have to start looking at health and healing from a totally different perspective. Like, it's much deeper than just getting rid of diabetes and hypertension.
Right.
Like, it's about elevating, it's about ascending, it's about experiencing life in the way where we were intended to experience it. And for us to be able to do that, yeah, I see a lot of people who heal, get rid of diabetes and, you know, hypertension. I mean, that's how I started my journey. I got diagnosed with hypertension when I was 16, and I lived with it into my 20s. And it wasn't until I thought I was going to have a stroke, because as I'm at the hospital, I'm seeing brothers and sisters come in there who are in their 30s having strokes, and I'm about to be 30, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this is going to be me.
Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't until that experience that I said, all right, I need to take care of myself better. And so, you know, like, what I really, you know, tough for that experience that I really want to give to other people is that, you know, I thought that that was the end all be all, to get rid of the hypertension, to get rid of the sleep apnea. But what I got out of the experience beyond just getting healthy was far more than that. It was a spiritual experience to go through that healing. So that's why I really don't, if I refer to myself as a healer, it's only from the sense that I heal myself. Because I believe that everybody is here on this earth to do that work. Everybody's supposed to be their own healer. And so I'm an inspiration of healing for other people to become their own healers.
Mm-hmm.
But the important healing I think that people need to do is like the spiritual healing,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what's going to kind of elevate us into understanding what this life is really about. It's far beyond just this physical form that we're experiencing.
Right.
You know.
Now, as somebody who was a previous pharmacist, right, and you know the I talked about this previously. Everybody is always high these days because we always get high off something now, right?
Yeah.
We don't know level states anymore, right? You know, pharmacy comes from pharmakia, right?
Yeah.
You know, and it can be broken down to meaning a drug, you know, a poison, right? Or essentially like a medicine. You feel me? And so when I look at the pharmaceutical industry, some of them are drugs, some of them are medicine, some of them are poisons.
Yeah.
Right? How did you feel morally about the practice of the pharmaceutical industry, right? Especially as you develop in consciousness.
Yeah. So, I mean, everything is about elevating. So you start where you are. So in my mind, you know, watching my grandmother die when I was 15 as a result of colorectal cancer. And literally, I walked in the house. She was waiting for me to get there. I said a few words and she passed away. And having that experience, I just wanted to help my people heal. So I went to what I knew was best. So I go to the pharmacy school, I graduate. And you have the experience where you realize that isn't the true healing.
How many years of school was that?
8. And so like, but what I'm always reflective. So I remember like during the 90s, one of my relatives cooking crack on the stove.
Mm-hmm.
And I marveled at the fact that you can turn this powder into a hardened substance.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, like that was chemistry. So when I went to school, I'm like, I want to learn chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
That looked like chemistry. So when I asked my teacher about it, that's why I got so involved in chemistry.
When they was cooking this crack, was it for usage or selling?
To sell.
Okay.
And
just for context.
Yeah. And so I go to school. I said, I'm gonna be a chemistry major. Like that was dope to me. Like to watch it.
That was dope to you.
And so now I go to school and I ask the teacher, well, how do you form take powder and form like a heart? He's like, well, you crystallize it. No, I asked him.
You in there asking, you had to answer the trap boy questions.
But he had the answers.
Yeah, he had the answers.
And so when he explained it to me, it just made me fall in love with chemistry.
Yeah.
Now, as I go through school, what I realized was whether
The
you're a
Wall Street
doctor
trapper
or pharmacy,
questions.
doctor or pharmacist, you learn inorganic chemistry and organic chemistry.
Yeah.
Inorganic chemistry is man-made chemistry.
Yeah.
It's the unnatural side of chemistry.
Mm.
It's a rock. It's synthetic, whatever they make in
Right.
the lab. Organic side of chemistry is biology. It's us. It's
Right.
nature.
And
it's
things
food.
that are natural elements on the periodic table.
Yes. And so as I'm going through this transformation in my health and trying to figure out things, I'm trying to figure out, well, why do these drugs only treat the symptoms? They don't heal anybody. And it was like, well, what side of chemistry are you on? I'm on the inorganic side, the unnatural. I said, well, it makes sense. Like, I'm natural.
Right.
And I'm putting something unnatural in my body, hoping that it will do a natural thing, which is to heal and regenerate. That probably doesn't make sense to the body. Let me take the perspective of what happens when I put something natural or organic in my body. What happens? And that was the whole idea. Now, I felt like a hypocrite because, you know, as I go through this healing transformation and people are noticing, like I'm one of the only Black doctors there, and you know, my lab coat is now slouching on me, like I look 10 years younger, etc. And they're starting to ask me, what am I doing? And I'm writing down on a prescription pad, like, hey, this is what I did, go home, do this for like a month and let me know how it goes. And I got people coming back like, Doc, that shit worked.
Yeah.
And then I have people calling up there to the hospital like, hey, let me speak to the black pharmacist
Yeah,
up there.
yeah, yeah.
I'm like, what's up? And they're like, I need that thing you gave my uncle. And I'm like, what thing are you talking about? He's like, oh, okay, so I probably should just come up there. I shouldn't have called her. And that was that moment that I was like, what I'm doing isn't for the better of the hospital.
Right. If you got to do something if you got to heal people on the low,
On the low, on the low. Like it was that moment. It was like, damn, like I'm a hypocrite.
Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't from the sense of like I wanted to be one, but what I do was putting me in a position to be a hypocrite.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the moment that I literally said, I'm gonna take some time off. I walked away from my promising career, and that's how I ended up taking a job in Japan
Mm-hmm.
and moving there.
What was the job in Japan?
So I worked at a hospital, but the caveat was, hey, if I come out there, I've been reading about these people in the blue zone out there.
Mm-hmm.
They live to 100, eat primarily a plant-based diet, and die quietly in their sleep. Can you hook it up where I can go and spend some time with them every weekend and do research? So that was the exchange.
Right.
I go work, do my thing out there, but as long as I can learn from these people, that was the exchange.
How long you plan on living?
Until my work is done.
You want to be a centenarian?
It doesn't matter to me. Because
Centenarian,
I look at life different.
Yeah.
I believe that if I died right now, I would wake up a minute later, a baby in Peru. Boom, ready to go again, do the work again. So the way that I look at life is different. I don't look at it like I need to live to 120 or 100. I look at it totally different.
I like that. Now, in the blue zones, you got Italy, Spain, France, and Japan. Those were the top 4. And it's funny because, you know, when you go visit, I've been to France and Italy. I haven't been to Japan and Spain yet. But the pace of life, right? It's much calmer.
Yes.
I mean, that's how I would frame that, right? Yeah. Even though a lot of those places, they smoke a lot of cigarettes, especially in like Italy. Like they still smoke cigarettes inside of restaurants. It's terrible. But the pace of living, it just feel more relaxed, right? And the food quality in different places outside America is completely different. Like, I don't think you would have to avoid meat, especially if you didn't live in America, right? But the meat in America is just of a terrible quality. The vegetables and the fruit in America don't taste the same, right? I was just in Jamaica, and it's number one, the air quality is just different. We just seen the air quality crisis that was going on in New York, right? But the particles per matter and the hoods of America is terrible, right? People don't even know. A lot of people that have never left the hood have never experienced a real fresh breath of air.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you can go from out here from Compton to Beverly Hills and the air quality is completely different, right? They have signs that says no smoking, right, on the sidewalks.
Yeah.
So you're going to breathe differently. Some people have never been to the ocean, right? Have never grounded and taken their shoes off and, you know, allow themselves 20 minutes on the ground and recharge up and get their blood flowing.
Yeah.
So most people are living almost in like a almost dead state, right? And so telling somebody, you know, the effects of eating is something they've never experienced. So you're saying something completely foreign to them, right? It's like telling them go visit an alien world, right?
Yeah.
But these are true, like there's enough science out there where it's like, you know, when they change the diets of prisoners, it decreases like suicide by almost 100%.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Violence by like 50%, right? And stress and anxiety is just cut all the way down just through improving food.
Yep.
Right? So when you look at areas that have food deserts, that have bad air quality, that have stressful environments, that have low education, that are always busy, this is an environment that is created to kill people.
Yep.
This is an environment that is created to decrease the life expectancy of those people,
100%.
right? Cut that all the way down, right? And so you have to really think about the quality of life that you want to live, right? Like you said, it's the longevity of life, that's up to you. If you want to live to 120, you know what I'm saying? By all means. But what about the quality of life while you're living? Because anything can happen. So I want to feel good every day.
Yeah.
Right? Like I have a lot of energy, right? Like, you know, as you get older, I study different things about myself. I feel so much lighter that I've been fasting over the last, you know, couple of weeks. My body feels lighter. There's no back pain, right? and even addressing that, you can go to the chiropractor, which, you know, some chiropractors I think are very kind of holistic sometimes.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, they're not going to tell you to do the thing that's going to strengthen your back.
Yeah.
Because they want you to keep coming there so they can keep cracking your back.
Right.
Right. But what I learned is, damn, I did my own independent research and I learned 3 different exercises to do. And now I don't have any back pain.
Yeah.
Right. Versus there was never, I went through a lot of different chiropractors and not one of them told me one regimen or one single exercise ever to strengthen my back.
Me
Not
either,
once.
now that I think about it.
Right?
Yeah.
But when I learned it and I did the deadlifts and I did the squats and I did this other one and this other little exercise, it went away instantly.
Yeah.
Why? Because you wouldn't think about stepping into a chiropractor office if you feel amazing.
Right.
Right? So it's not just hospitals, you know what I'm saying, and pharmacists. And it's like all of these people, you have to think about how they're being incentivized to keep their careers and increase their bottom line. And your illness, your treatment is their lifestyle. That's how they stay bread and butter.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So a society healed, that destroys industries.
All industries,
There's
all major industries.
There's a certain if you heal the Black community, a certain entertainment we're not watching anymore.
Yeah.
That industry just is just decimated. If you teach Black people about nutrition and mineralizing their bodies and eating right and being in the sun, there's certain fast food companies that just disappear because they're placed all throughout the
in a
hood.
week.
Yeah, they're just gone.
Yeah.